Number 4, the Isaiah 19 highway, the multiplication of houses of prayer in the region. If you're not familiar with this, look up Isaiah chapter 19, especially verses 23 through 25, where God says he's going to build a highway between Egypt and Assyria, and the Egyptians will worship with the Assyrians. And the Assyrians means that green part. That's the whole Assyrian Empire. And so he said, and then Israel will become a third with them. It doesn't mean third place. It's more the idea of a third voice joining in unity. It's like the word you would use of a third part of a trio. It's like they're worshiping the Lord together. And the countries that this will affect are amazing. If you think it's Western Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, parts of Saudi Arabia, all of Jordan, Syria, all of Lebanon, Armenia, Turkey, Cyprus. All of that area was the Assyrian Empire, and they will worship, and God will make this amazing highway. But he said it will be a highway of worship. That's why the Beirut House of Prayer. That's why the Izmir House of Prayer. That's why Alexandria House of Prayer, Asyut House of Prayer, different places. All of these, and some, have been going out. Virginia's been going actually different times now as a single woman, which is, I think, very, very brave in this region, and going to places like Iraq and ministering to them there. And we're just blessed as we see the Lord working in the region. If we look at the next slide. Quickly, the upper left-hand corner is me 20 years ago with hair. So actually it was much longer before that, but I still had hair at least. And in the year 2000, the Lord said, I want you to go to Iraq, and I want you to go to ancient Nineveh, ancient Ur, and ancient Babylon, and I want you to proclaim that the door is opening up for the fulfillment of Isaiah 19, that it's the beginning, the very beginnings, but I am beginning, and I'm going to move, and I am going to establish my Isaiah 19 highway. Now I said, Lord, it'd be much easier to proclaim that from Jerusalem because Saddam Hussein was in power, and the Americans weren't exactly the most welcome people in Iraq at the time. Long story short, through a friend from Lebanon, I got into Iraq, and I'm there at a hotel in Baghdad, and I'm sitting at the table, only men in the hotels there, the way that particular hotel, the way they, culture is there. And I realize this man speaks English. We start talking. I realize he's a pastor from Egypt. I said, can we go outside? Because I knew it was bugged. So we went outside, and I said, I've got to tell you a secret. I said, I'm not only an American, but I live in Israel. He looked at me like, you live in Israel? He said, don't you know it's dangerous here? I said, yeah, but God said to come here. I said, do you know what Isaiah 19 is? He said, am I Egyptian? Of course I know what Isaiah 19 is. Egypt will be my people. It's part of Isaiah 19. And so I said, well, the Lord told me go to Babylon and go to Ur and go to Nineveh, which was the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Nineveh is now in what is now called Mosul, where ISIS had their caliphate. And the Lord said, go in those 3 places and announce I'm going to begin my Isaiah 19 highway. Then his eyes got really big, and he said, God told me the exact same thing. First time we ever met in our life. Some of you know him. I won't say his name because it's on video here, from Egypt, a major leader in Egypt now. And so we went to those 3 cities, and him from Egypt, me from Israel, and there we are in Assyria going to to Nineveh, the center of those gates. Those are the reconstructed gates of Nineveh there. Now, ISIS came in and there was all of this stuff. But recently, they've been able to start a youth center now. From Erbil in Iraq, they've gone into Mosul, and they've started a youth center with a house of prayer. So God has his house of prayer. ISIS is gone, and God is there with his Isaiah 19, the beginnings, of his worship. The picture on the right is the dedication of the Istanbul House of Prayer, and the lady on the left is Egyptian from the Alexandria House of Prayer. The guy in the middle, some of you may recognize, our son-in-law Adam, who was not very subtle about the fact he was coming from Israel, wearing a T-shirt with a with a talit and a shofar in Istanbul. That's Adam. And next to him is a guy named Vedat, whose dad, he's Turkish, and his father was a Muslim who came to the Lord through an encounter with Jesus while he was doing the pilgrimage, the Hajj, in Mecca. Met Jesus in Mecca. I mean, it's just a phenomenal, amazing story. He said Jesus literally came into the room and told him, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. You will never get free from the things you're dealing with unless you come to me. If you will leave the Hajj, go home, follow me, I will set you free. And he put his hand on his chest, and he said it burned like fire. He said, I felt fire in his hand. And then he said, and I heard this firsthand from him. This is not secondhand. I heard it from the Father himself. He said, it burnt like this. He said, the next morning when I got up, I thought, did I imagine that? Did Jesus really come in the room and talk to me? And he said, I looked in the mirror, and there, Turkish men didn't have lots of dark hair here on their chest. He said, there was a white handprint. Literally, where Jesus had put his hand had turned white. The hair had turned white. I saw it, actually. Now there's a gray around, but he showed me the handprint. I mean, it's just phenomenal. What God is doing is we're praying for dreams and visions and visitations of the Lord all over this region. The Lord is doing it. But then there needs to be a next step, and that's the house of prayer, the worship and the prayer to break through in that region. So in the lower right-hand corner there was one of our first, I believe it was the first one, of the birthing houses of prayer in one of those countries. There's in Antioch in Turkey. And you could see Gary's head a little bit over there, and Woody and Kim, Patricia. There's Reuben and Melissa. I'm sorry, I just went blank there. Reuben and Melissa, and it was a wonderful, wonderful start. And it went after that. There were birthing houses of prayer seminars in Antioch, and Izmir, and Ankara, and Gaziantep, in Beirut at the House of Prayer, Alexandria, Egypt, Asyut, Egypt. Cairo, Dubai. Actually, not in Cairo, it wasn't. It was in Asyut and in Alexandria. The last picture down there in the corner is in Gaziantep, Turkey. And this is a house of prayer with mainly Kurdish and Iranian believers. And, when sitting on the floor there, almost all Muslims who had come to Yeshua. And one of them actually got healed that night, physically healed. And it was a very powerful, encouraging time. And in that picture, also in the very background, you can see a Korean with a camera. So there's always a Korean with a camera there to film what God is doing. Next